People often wonder about how Bill Buttaggi and I became a couple. Well, we actually started dating, two very different worlds in Rochester, New York. In fact, we dated the third Thursday of every month. It worked out in both of our schedules. And so about a year into this third Thursday, we're in my apartment and Bill said to me, "Do you like living here?" And I said, "Like living here? Are you kidding? It's East Avenue. It's the avenue, and I can walk to work, and I've got parquet floors, and it's magnificent." No, the way it's decorated. And I said, "Oh, well, I don't care about that." And indeed, my furniture was probably in the same place it dropped when I moved into the apartment. So he said, "Well, do you have money?" And I said, "What do you mean, do I have money?" And he said, "Well, if you have money, I'll redecorate your apartment." So instead of the third Thursday, it was the next 6 months intense as Bill totally transformed my apartment into something that truly should have been in a magazine. But isn't it a clever man who at the end of the 6 months asked me to marry him? And I said, "Why would I want to marry you? I've got this great apartment." But when I said yes, all of the new furniture and artwork that we bought fits in his condominium. So I guess it was fate or something. From the very beginning, there was something about Design by Buttaggi and how Bill would use his gifts, both left and right side of his brain. You know, we moved to Sarasota not because it was my idea, it was because it was Bill's idea. He sold his company and I'm like, oh my goodness sakes, I better find a place to work. We knew we wanted the West Coast, we knew we wanted water. I was fortunate to find a position with then Sun Bank. And I accept the position. Bill's deal to sell his company falls through and I end up in Sarasota 6 months by myself and living in Central Park, which is close to downtown, right a little short distance from Selby Gardens, but it's not quite up to the standards of Bill Buttaggi. He came down and visited me every 3 weeks. Every time Bill would come down, he would be looking for our first house. So our first house after Central Park Apartments was out on Siesta Key, 147 Sand Dollar Lane. There were so many pluses about living at Sand Dollar Lane, the water. We had a community pool for the 10 houses that were here. We had a tennis court, but every time you needed to go into the city, you'd have to turn left. And the traffic, not so great. But the house itself was another superb place to entertain, whether it was parties for bank employees or, again, the holidays, where we can remember making incredible friendships. One of our key ones is with Patty O'Berg and Stuart Brugger. Oh, the tales I could tell you about the mischief those two did at Sand Dollar Lane. I have to tell you, though, looking at it today, Bill would be brokenhearted because the lush landscape that he planted around our entrance and the color, it just was a very special place. And again, time marches on. On the deck, we used to have parties, and I can remember the famous ring-a-dee-ding-a-dee-ding, who's got the ring? The ring-a-dee-ding-a-dee-ding. That was my father's game. We're not directly on the water. This is where all of the homes in this enclave are able to come over here for sunset or perhaps cocktails, watching the beautiful vistas. So one story to share, oftentimes we'd come over for sunset and Bill would point out the sunset and he said, "We have a sunset every night." And that's when his sister Shar said, "Bill, everyone has a sunset every night." It's one of the classic family stories that we treasure. this was the neighborhood of famous people. Right next door was John McDonald, who wrote the color detective novels. And one of the things about Sand Dollar Lane, every night when the bars closed down at 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning, it was like the Indianapolis 500 going around the curves by our house. So it was okay, but maybe one of the reasons that we decided maybe we don't want to live on the Key anymore. So here we are at 1900 Lincoln Drive, and how this came about, we were living on Siesta Key at Sand Dollar Lane, and we decided bridges too much, we want to get closer to my parking space. That was part of the theory. So Bill met with the builder, Dan Michaels, and designed the house for this piece of property. And before Dan Michaels would sign a contract with Bill, Dan said, I need to meet your wife. And Bill said, she really doesn't want to be involved in this. He said, I'm not doing it unless Deborah meets with me first, and then I'll proceed. So Bill comes, I come, I sit in the meeting, Dan's across the table. He said, okay, let's review the plans. I said, I don't want to see them. He said, well, let's talk about what your wishes are. I said, my wish is that Bill would be left alone to do this house. And I never looked at the plans. I left the meeting. I do believe I signed the contract, but Bill proceeded to build a magnificent house. This house was so perfect for entertaining. We had many parties one year we were the co-chairs of the Going for the Gold Gala with the YMCA. We had that party here. I do want to share a quick story about that. It was all scheduled to be, I think, at 1 o'clock in the afternoon on the coldest day in March in recent history. And in fact, the guests arrived with their fur coats to sit out on our lanai for the Harry's Continental Kitchen buffet. But what was fun about that one is Janet and Stanley Kane, big supporters of the Y, arrived an hour and a half early. So fortunately, my parents were with us and had an opportunity to enjoy the company of Janet and Stanley, who quite honestly are two of the world's nicest people, and they're now earthly angels also. What was special about this house to us is our son Bill lived with us, because he came down and was a student at Ringling College of Art and Design. So honestly, it was a magical time while we lived here. One of the stories about building this house is I do believe it was the first house that Dan Michaels ever built that had no punch list, because every single day from permitting to certificate of occupancy, Bill would come over and fix, tweak, straighten. We always said that every electrical outlet, the screws were all facing vertical, he would make sure. So his attention to detail made this an idyllic place to live with so many wonderful memories. So honestly, it was a magical time while we lived here. Why didn't we stay here? It was almost like he was becoming a slave to the house, and we thought, no, let's downsize. We don't need this big of a house now. And that's when we decided to go to Palm Avenue Villas. We're now at number 6, South Palm Avenue Villas. Why did we move here? Well, we were at Lincoln Drive, and it felt like Bill was becoming a slave to the maintenance of the house. And we thought, why don't we downsize? And Palm Avenue Villas were being constructed, so Bill came over, saw the plans. He purchased the first one, because remember, I never know where we're going to live. So he purchased the first one. We moved here. It was a fun place to live, but honestly too tiny. Our backyard abutted Burns Court Cinema.
I never would have made that connection.
Yeah. We like to entertain, and you really couldn't have more than a couple over. So the rooms were a little bit chopped up, nice. Actually, my closet in this place was bigger than most people's bedrooms, but that wasn't enough to make us stay. So we really weren't here very long. In fact, we didn't even have the house on the market. Bill had a realtor friend who said, "So, do you want to sell?" And Bill said, "Not really yet. We will someday." And she said, "But what if I brought a price that would be interesting to you?" And thus why our Palm Avenue Villa chapter closed.
So where are we headed to now?
Well, now we're headed to Bay Plaza. And Bay Plaza was after Palm Avenue Villas. So when our realtor friends, Judy and Georgina, brought Bill a deal he could not refuse for Palm Avenue Villas, we had to go, where are we gonna go? Fortunately, Bill was in the midst of renovating a unit just for investment purposes at Bay Plaza. And I said, "Ooh, Bay Plaza, could we live there? I would love to live there." And in fact, it was an incredible place to live from my perspective because it's all concierge. You can't park your car, which did not make Bill happy because, you know, he likes to touch his car and make sure it's okay. But for me, they got to know my habits with work, and by the way, it was less than 2 miles to my parking space. When I would leave in the morning, the concierge had already sent up the elevator to help me. So it was an incredibly pampering place to live. We didn't live here long, but we have such grand memories of the friends that we made while we lived at Bay Plaza.
Oh, that's nice. Did he make any design changes in you?
No. And of course, no shortage of working his magic while he was at Bay Plaza. Again, he gutted. In fact, he had to remove Mexican tile on the second floor unit that we were in. And at that time, below us, right next door, was a business. So you can imagine Bill having Andy Garcia take out Mexican tile while the business wanted to continue to operate. So there was great navigation of, how can we all get along well together? One of our memories at Bay Plaza is Bill and I came back from the Daytona 500. And as we pulled in here and the concierge driver opened the door and Bill said, "Oh, we just came from the Daytona 500. And the parking attendant said, "Isn't it a shame that Dale Earnhardt died?" And we knew Dale was in a horrific accident, but we did not know he died. The two of us actually went into mourning because Dale was my favorite driver at the time, but it was just another Bay Plaza memory that comes back whenever I see this drive about. This was a perfect place to watch fireworks. It was fun to be able to be downtown while we were here. And of course, Bill got to sit on that patio and watch President G.W. Bush go from Longboat Key on 9/11 up to Booker Elementary School. So very emotional, but being part of history. Welcome to Lincoln Park Circle, which is actually right across the street from Lincoln Drive. Remember, after Lincoln Drive, we went downsized to Palm Avenue Villas, then we went to Bay Plaza, and while we were at Bay Plaza, Bill built our home here at Lincoln Park Circle. There's only 8 homes on the circle, and from scratch, Bill built it and became the chairman of the Homeowners Association. This is where, remember, 2 neighbors from Palm Avenue Villas also came to Lincoln Park Circle to live here. While the house was magnificent and Bill did a superb job here, being the chair of the Homeowners Association was just a little bit more than he bought into, because some of them started to treat him like he was their maintenance man. Here we are at the dock that came with the house at our Lincoln Park Circle home. And it was so much fun to come over to the dock. We didn't have a boat at that time, but we could watch the manatees play and probably get cozy in the Hudson Bayou. As beautiful as this house is and was, too many stairs. So that's when, as we were aging, we thought, no, we've got to go single level. And that's when we went to our next adventure. My parents lived in Sarasota in an apartment off of Bay Vista, but my father was starting to have health issues, so we wanted to make sure we were living closer to them. So Bill made the decision, instead of escalating the type of housing we were in, he decided that we would take a step down so that we could buy 2 houses. So we moved to Forest Lakes, and the reason we thought of Forest Lakes is when I first came to town, when I was alone for that 6 months, a close colleague had a house here that I always enjoyed visiting. So we ended up buying 3307. Bill did a complete renovation to his famous, let's take out a wall here, let's, rebuild over here. We actually ended up with the most expensive value house in all of Forest Lakes. It's on a golf course, so we did have the joy of having golf balls often in our backyard, but that was part of the charm of living here. It was a great place for us to live because we were able to buy a house for my mom and dad 2 doors down. And I'd say that these homeowners have done a phenomenal job in terms of caring for this home. So
Sure have.
my dad has since, my dad and Bill are up in the heavenly choir. My mom will love seeing this house when the video comes out. Bill has quite a heart for taking care of family. So we're going to take a little bit of a detour for the next home by Bill Buttaggi. Frankly, in 2003-04, Bill said to me, I just want to go and live on a mountain. And I thought, oh dear. But I said, well, all right, go find a house on the mountain. And indeed he did. He found what came to be known as Crestview in Blairsville, Georgia. And for 10 years, we went up every weekend, year-round, to enjoy the glorious North Georgia mountains. Now, we took advice from Janet and Stanley Kane, who had invited us to their home up in Martha's Vineyard. And Janet said, when you have a second home, it's like a birthday cake. It's better when you share it with others. So throughout that 10 years, we had company, and they would come to see us up at Crestview, and they would sign into our guest book.
Dear Deborah and Bill, from the Buckhead Diner to the Buttaggi Blue Burgers, it was a fun-filled weekend of rest, renewal, discovery, and deepening friendships.
Dear Deborah and Bill, what a wonderful refuge you have created in these beautiful mountains. You have given us a memorable weekend of laughter, stories, and thoughtful discussions.
Crestview is a perfect place, a slice of paradise. It was great fun to get to know Deborah and Bill better, to actually see that Deborah does own and wear a pair of jeans. Bill, of course, is a character and defies description.
Of special note is the baked oatmeal, sure to have international appeal. Your spectacular hideaway is perched on a crest. The view is nothing but the best.
What a wonderful getaway. Thank you for your warm hospitality. Our family really enjoyed our time with you. Of course, they, the kids, now want a mountain house too.
From Dan and Nancy Bailey, thanks so much for sharing with us a piece of your wedding cake. The thing that makes Crestview so very special is the special people who inhabit it.
Recalling our trip to that beautiful place, we walked out on the porch and the view was spectacular. It was just a real wow view. But the only thing that was even nicer than that was the hospitality that we enjoyed from Bill and Deborah.
Yeah.
I mean, they made us feel like kings and queens, and that's something I won't forget for a long time.
And they made that house as beautiful as their other houses.
Yeah.
So that was also fun to see and hear. It was done by the time we saw it, but it was just a perfect house.
Yeah.
Another one of Bill's perfect houses.
The adventures we had up there were fun dinners. We would go and hike we walked, no hiking for Mr. Buttaggi. So we hiked to see waterfalls. We had incredible fun surprises from guests. When Stuart Barger and his wife Patty O'Berg came to visit us, we were a little bit nervous because they always do something a little bit crazy. One morning we came down the stairs, because it was a 2-story Crestview, and we turned the corner and all of a sudden there was a deer singing a song. And it was Bucky. And Bucky was the head of a deer that was motion detected, and it would sing you different songs. Well, actually, Bill ended up having a ball with it, because whenever we would have company, he'd ask him to come up and look at the deer head that he had on the wall. And as soon as the company got close to it, he'd have it start singing. I gotta stop laughing. One night when we were there was a massive, massive snowstorm, and thick, so bad that it took out the power. So the next morning we had to get to the Atlanta airport for our flight back to Sarasota. As we were taking different turns, we kept trees were in the road blocking us. And Bill would get out of the car, he'd pull the trees back. But then one time, the tree was so big, it was like lost cause. At that moment, a lady came up in her pickup truck, got out of her pickup truck with her chainsaw, came over, cut the wood apart. Bill wasn't even out of his car yet, and she was hoisting these big logs over her shoulder across the curb. When she was done, she got back in her car. We kind of called her the Chainsaw Angel. So adventures, we were blessed. But after 10 years, Mr. Buttaggi, he said, gotta move on. It's time for us to go traveling more. So it was time to travel and back to Sarasota to yet another home by Bill Buttaggi. So when it came time to sell the 2 homes in Espanola, Bill went on a search and found this magnificent home on the prettiest street in Sarasota. So here we are at 4839 Windsor Park. Gorgeous foliage, a magnificent house. It's on a lake. It was a superb place for us to be with a 3-car garage. Very important at last, Bill had a place that he will always have a special car. And trust me, he had some beauties. And actually, Bill's garages became pretty famous that people wanted to see them. Of course, they were well organized. And the slot for his special car looks kind of like a race car garage. Looked like the winner's circle at a racetrack. But we were able to use the house for entertaining, and one of our most fun parties was celebrating the wedding of Bill Wegge and Beth Duda, where they did their dance routine in the special garage.
This thing called love, I can't handle it. This thing called love.
So we have incredible memories from 4839 that Bill made. So it's no surprise that Bill kind of has, I always call it permanence disorder, where he doesn't really like to stay in any home very long. But this time he had a purpose on why we would move from Windsor Park. We wanted to downsize because we wanted to travel more. So Bill found a home closer to the airport, and we downsized by probably about 1,200, 1,300 square feet. So a lot of free stuff that we gave away. So we move into our new house in January of 2020. In case that resonates with anyone, that's 3 months before COVID hit. So, so much for that travel idea. That didn't exactly work. But what was beautiful about it is we got to live in the house together. We had extra time together. And Bill renovated as we were living here. And he was able to transform this house into something that was incredibly special. And it has touches of Buttaggi throughout it. In fact, the divider in this great room has been in every home since Rochester, New York. So, and he's just recovered it, and it's fit in with the decor wherever we have lived. But he was at this phase right now, he had to have a 3-car garage. So we often say, as much as we downsized, we had a 3-car garage that happened to have a house attached to it. There was something in that brain that was always seeing things, and he could imagine what is possible. Just he would know, looking at a room, I need to move this wall. I need to remove this. So he just saw things. And it wasn't I can't say that he was never inspired by other people, but what came out of his brain was always like, oh my goodness, that's just the thing that should happen. One of the final things Bill did in this house was the master bath bedroom suite. So the bedroom was a little small. He was always disappointed in that. But my closet, he doubled the size of the closet. He took out the tub. He has the most fantastic shower unit in there. And you walk in that bathroom and you go, this is like beyond super cool. Who would have guessed? Over 37 years, we would have lived in 9 different places. Every single one of them were special, not only because of Bill's design and his imagination, but how we would entertain family and friends. The homes really were lived in. They were filled with love and laughter and family and friends and entertaining and just imaginative experiences.
Don't waste this love, I wanna give it to you. Tell me what you got, show me what you can do.
Show me love, show me everything.
I know you got potential, so baby let me in and show me love. Show me love, show me love, show me life, show me life. Baby, show me what it's all about. You're the one that I ever needed. Show me love and what it's all about. Alright, show me love, show me life and what it's all about. Show me love, show me life and what it's all about. You're the one that I ever needed. Show me love and what it's all about. Alright.
Yes, indeed, we are blessed.